There are many different types of warfare in the world, and the classification of these types can vary depending on the perspective and context. However, some common types of warfare include 1. Conventional warfare. This is the most common type of warfare, where 2 or more armies engage in direct combat using traditional military tactics and weapons. Conventional warfare refers to military operations that involve the use of traditional weapons and tactics, such as tanks, artillery, infantry, and air power, to achieve strategic objectives. In contrast to unconventional warfare, such as guerrilla warfare or terrorism, conventional warfare typically involves formal military forces engaging in open combat against each other in well-defined battlefields or theaters of operation. Conventional warfare is often fought between nation-states or between alliances of nation-states and may involve the use of conventional military strategies, such as attrition, maneuver, and encirclement. The use of nuclear, biological, or chemical weapons is generally considered outside the bounds of conventional warfare. 2. Unconventional warfare. This type of warfare involves the use of non-traditional military tactics, such as guerrilla warfare, insurgency, or terrorism, to achieve military objectives. Unconventional warfare (UW) is a type of military operation that involves the use of tactics and strategies that are different from those used in conventional warfare. It is typically employed by non-state actors, such as insurgent groups or guerrilla fighters, who operate outside of the traditional military hierarchy and use tactics such as ambushes, sabotage, and hit-and-run attacks to achieve their objectives. UW is characterized by its reliance on irregular tactics, including the use of covert operatives, intelligence gathering, and unconventional weapons. It often involves the use of asymmetric tactics, where a weaker force seeks to exploit the vulnerabilities of a stronger force, such as through the use of improvised explosive devices (IEDs) or other forms of asymmetric warfare. In contrast to conventional warfare, which is typically fought between nation-states or formal military organizations, UW is often fought by non-state actors who lack the resources and technology of a traditional military force. Because of this, UW can be difficult to predict and counter and requires a different set of skills and strategies than conventional warfare. 3. Asymmetric warfare. This is a type of warfare where one side has a significant advantage over the other in terms of military strength, leading the weaker side to use non-traditional tactics to level the playing field. Asymmetric warfare is a form of warfare where opposing forces have different capabilities, strengths, and weaknesses. In an asymmetric conflict, one side is usually significantly weaker than the other in terms of military power, resources, or technology, and as a result, the weaker side must use unconventional tactics to gain an advantage. Asymmetric warfare can take many forms, including insurgency, guerrilla warfare, terrorism, and cyber warfare. In such conflicts, the weaker side often seeks to avoid direct engagement with the stronger force, instead relying on surprise attacks, sabotage, and other forms of asymmetrical tactics to disrupt the enemy's operations and gain strategic advantages. Asymmetric warfare can be challenging for the stronger side because traditional military tactics and strategies may not be effective against an opponent who is less reliant on traditional methods of warfare. Asymmetric warfare also tends to be drawn out and difficult to resolve, as the weaker side may be able to continue fighting despite sustaining significant losses. Ultimately, success in asymmetric warfare often depends on factors such as intelligence gathering, diplomacy, and the ability to adapt to rapidly changing circumstances. 4. Cyber warfare. This type of warfare involves the use of computer technology to disrupt or damage an opponent's computer systems or networks. Cyber warfare refers to the use of digital attacks such as hacking, malware, and denial of service attacks to disrupt, damage, or destroy computer systems and networks. Cyber warfare can be carried out by state actors, non-state actors, or individuals, and can target a wide range of targets, including government agencies, military organizations, critical infrastructure, and businesses. Cyber warfare can take many forms, including espionage, theft of sensitive information, sabotage, destruction, or alteration of data, and propaganda spreading false information or disinformation. It can also be used to disrupt or disable critical infrastructure, such as power grids, telecommunications networks, or transportation systems. One of the challenges of cyber warfare is that it can be difficult to attribute attacks to specific actors, as hackers can use a variety of techniques to hide their identities and location. This makes it difficult for governments to respond effectively to cyber attacks, as they may not be able to identify the source of the attack or determine an appropriate course of action. As reliance on digital technology continues to grow, the threat of cyber warfare is becoming increasingly significant. And governments and organizations around the world are investing in cybersecurity measures to protect themselves against cyber attacks. 5. Chemical warfare. This type of warfare involves the use of chemical agents such as nerve gas or mustard gas to incapacitate or kill enemy combatants. Chemical warfare is the use of chemical agents such as poisonous gases to cause injury, incapacitation, or death in humans. Chemical warfare agents can be categorized into several classes based on their effects, including nerve agents, blister agents, blood agents, choking agents, and riot control agents. Chemical warfare has been used in various conflicts throughout history, including World War I, where both sides used poisonous gases such as chlorine and mustard gas. The use of chemical weapons is now prohibited by international law under the Chemical Weapons Convention, which bans the production, stockpiling, and use of chemical weapons. Despite this, there have been several instances of chemical warfare in recent history, including the use of sarin gas in the 1995 Tokyo subway attack and the use of chlorine gas in the Syrian civil war. The use of chemical weapons is considered a war crime and is widely condemned by the international community. 6. Biological warfare. This type of warfare involves the use of biological agents such as viruses or bacteria to infect or kill enemy combatants. Biological warfare, also known as germ warfare, is the use of biological agents such as bacteria, viruses, or toxins to cause disease or death in humans, animals, or plants. Biological agents can be used in a variety of ways, including through the air, water, or food supply, or by direct contact with infected individuals or materials. Biological warfare has a long history and was used as early as the 14th century when the Mongols reportedly catapulted plague-infected corpses over the walls of the city of Kaffa, now Feodosia, Ukraine, during a siege. The use of biological weapons is now prohibited by international law under the Biological Weapons Convention, which bans the development, production, and stockpiling of biological weapons. Despite this, there have been several instances of suspected or confirmed use of biological weapons in recent history, including the use of anthrax in the 2001 anthrax attacks in the United States, and the use of chemical weapons in the Syrian civil war. The use of biological weapons is considered a war crime and is widely condemned by the international community. 7. Nuclear warfare. This is the most destructive type of warfare, involving the use of nuclear weapons to inflict massive damage and casualties on an opponent. Nuclear warfare is the use of nuclear weapons, such as atomic bombs or hydrogen bombs, to cause mass destruction and death. Nuclear weapons are the most powerful weapons ever created, and their use can have devastating consequences, including widespread destruction, radiation poisoning, and long-term environmental damage. The use of nuclear weapons has been a concern since the development of the first atomic bombs during World War II. And the use of nuclear weapons is now prohibited by international law under the Treaty on the Non-Proliferation of Nuclear Weapons. The treaty aims to prevent the spread of nuclear weapons and promote disarmament and has been signed by most countries around the world. Despite the ban on nuclear weapons, there are still several countries that possess nuclear weapons, and the possibility of nuclear war remains a concern. The use of nuclear weapons is widely seen as a last resort, and their use would have catastrophic consequences for both the aggressor and the target. Efforts continue to reduce the number of nuclear weapons in the world and prevent their use in any future conflicts. These are just a few examples of the different types of warfare that exist, and there are many other types and subtypes that can be identified. In addition, the long-term effects of chemical and biological warfare can be severe and far-reaching, both for individuals and for the environment. Here are some of the common long-term effects of chemical and biological warfare. 1. Health impacts. Chemical and biological agents can cause a range of health effects, including respiratory problems, skin disorders, neurological damage, and cancer. Some of these effects may not be apparent until many years after exposure. 2. Environmental impacts. Chemical and biological agents can contaminate soil, water, and air, leading to long-term environmental damage and health risks for humans and other living beings. 3. Economic impacts. Chemical and biological warfare can have a significant impact on the economy of affected regions, as it can cause damage to infrastructure, disrupt supply chains, and lead to loss of income and productivity. 4. Social impacts. Chemical and biological warfare can also have long-term social impacts, including the displacement of populations, loss of cultural heritage, and social disruption. 5. Political impacts. Chemical and biological warfare can have long-term political impacts as well, including the destabilization of governments, the breakdown of diplomatic relations, and the erosion of trust between nations. It is worth noting that the long-term effects of chemical and biological warfare can vary depending on the specific agents used, the intensity of the exposure, and the duration of the conflict. In some cases, the effects may be limited or short-lived, while in others, they may be severe and long-lasting.